So I'm Mike Brockley, and so I'm gonna be right up front with you. I write prose poems. Um, my lines are unbroken. Um, when you see it see my poem on a page, it looks like a map from a state in the Midwest, maybe Kansas or something like that, like the outline of that state. So that's what I traffic in. And so. And like anybody, I write about a lot of different kind of things, but I do write a series of poems. I write a series of poems about Wile E. Coyote. So I mentioned that, but I didn't bring any Wile E. Coyote poems with me today. I write a series of poems about a guy named Aloha Shirt Man. I don't know why I picked that, but so I was going to read one of those, and I also write a series of poems about um, taking walks with a a deceased dog of mine, white German Shepherd named Sadie. So I'll sample some of those and give some other examples of things I write about here today. But let's start off. I was looking, like all poets, I was looking for some new way of writing an Aloha Shirt Man poem. And I've been I have essentially been the sole person keeping the poetry economy going in terms of Zoom classes. I've taken 8,000 Zoom classes since COVID hit. So I have, and in the process, I wrote maybe one good poem, and I'll read that one 10 times. So one of those poems was a dear letter, and so I thought, well, I'll write a letter to Bob Dylan. And those of you, a lot of young people here, he's named Zimmy and Zimbo and all kinds of different things. So here's Dear Zimbo. Tomorrow, robots will begin composing all the new songs. Dibs on sad-eyed Alexa, the Echo Box, all along the iMac keyboard and Google Man. I remember the pinballs of your manic genius careening through my mind the first time I heard Al Cooper debut his organ chops on Like a Rolling Stone. The needle on my circle of sound plunked down on the calypso groove of Highway 61 revisited before I could ask, God, where do you want this killing done? I strutted through the university in bell-bottom jeans, a fringed suede jacket, and a knockoff of your Rolling Thunder fedora, kicking back in my cowboy boots, neck deep in the Tombstone Blues. And the way Queen Anne approximately rode regal in a Buick 6. Zimbo, what are the odds a robot knows more than Mr. Jones? I guarantee a million droids finger pecking at a million Hermes typewriters will never bask in a vision of Joanna or brandish a pink slip from Maggie's farm. After shadows in the night, I set out from Desolation Row, lugging Tom Tom's blues in a satchel filled with finger-pointing lyrics and mondegreens. By the time I hopped a crying train, I'd hoboed under a chicken sun and stayed in Mississippi a day too long. No cyborg celebrates being born in the house of the rising sun, or paints a masterpiece in Mobile with the Memphis Blues caterwauling in its tin-man heart. No rainy day woman got a wagon wheel bone to jump a long-gone AI daddy rocking in an easy chair. Zimmy, I'm not holding my breath for this idiot wind to pass. But I've visited the gypsies too. Will we still be young when the golems start knocking on heaven's door? So I had a German Shepherd, a white German Shepherd named Sadie that I really liked a lot, and she died. I had to put her down about 12 years ago. I've lived my life essentially being alone. So Sadie and the other 4 German Shepherds I had across the years kind of taught me how to be a human being. And so after she passed, I needed some guidance, so she started showing up again to kind of keep me on the straight and narrow. So I started writing these ghost dog walk poems, and then and I've written about, well, maybe 3 dozen of them or so, something like that. And I started having to do something different, so I just recently created Ghost Dog Road Trip Poems. So this is my first one, Ghost Dog Road Trip with Sadie, where she reminds me why I wanted to be a cowboy. With an atlas of America's haunted roads in the glove box and the reincarnation blues as our tailwind, I settle behind the wheel of a Silverado pickup truck and point the hood ornament west toward a different Eden on a November road in search of America Fantastica. The spirit of my white German Shepherd rides shotgun. This time, we carry the stories we wish were true. Sagas about flaming iguanas and Harry Truman's excellent adventures. We sing an unburied song during our passage beneath an endless sky, traveling at night in the company of gold Cadillacs and the last convertible. Sadie regales me with tales of how the last boys of summer hot-wired a DeLorean for a road trip on the Lincoln Highway until they ran out of fuel. Teaches me about racing in the rain when Amish buggies lap me as I pretend to drive Bonnie and Clyde's four-door deluxe. She reminds me why I wanted to be a cowboy. We're on the other side of disappearing, having whistled past graveyards and been baptized by a night of 2 moons. We're the highway kind, she says, as we solve small-town mysteries, rescue a widow's lost children, and lampoon fables from the 80s. Sadie summons her favorite birds, kingfishers, loons, golden cardinals from as far away as Graceland. I honk the horn to salute all my mother's lovers. In every paper town, we hear rumors of an abundance of Catherines, Mings, Fatimas, and Pilars. Until Sadie asks, why are the towns named on our maps missing along the roads we travel? That was a cento, and so a cento is something where you take established language, snippets of established language, and put them together. And I never liked how people would work centos and rigidly put them, just the titles together. And so Sadie and I kind of worked out this thing where we have walked through paintings, so it didn't involve cento, it was just an experience. But when I started drawing from literature titles and from song titles and things like that, I put Sadie in there, and we become the subject of the protagonist of the piece, and then the things that I credit kind of fall in like a blizzard on the poem. I kind of like doing that. Sadie does too, I think. So then I also started working with the notion of trying to write a different kind of a prose poem. And one of the things that my poems are usually 200, 250 words long, and sometimes they get longer. You might not be able to tell this, but I like to talk. Too much. Right, ladies? So I thought, well, what could be a challenge? And I thought, what about a 100-word poem? Shit. I don't know if I can do that. Well, I've done it 7 or 8 times now. This is one. So I had some people tell me I looked like people over the course of several years. I put them all together and I wrote doppelgangers. I write songs to myself. While my anthems thrill the Jersey girls strolling Thunder Road, I play villains in Hollywood and detectives in Denmark. Fly through Toy Story without wings or a cape. Brag my way into winning a Super Bowl and drink milk after crossing the finish line in Indianapolis. I survived the hole in the world at the Hotel California and a romance with Halle Berry. by torpedo a German gunboat in a lake fed by the Yulanga River. The annals of famous quotes include my mantra. I've got a fever, and the only prescription is more cowbell. That's right. Very good. So then I wanted to thank people, and Hiromi's not here, but last year Hiromi edited Stormwash, an ecological journal. I think it was subtitled Environmental Poems. And she took a poem of mine, another Ghost Walk with Sadie poem. And so I want to thank her, and I also kind of want to thank her and Tony for their literary citizenship. So this is a thank you to Hiromi. Ghost Dog Walk with Sadie beside a mirage of dark water. So this is a cento using the titles of movies, eco-movies. And so here we go. You're losing ground to the beast of the southern wild, says the ghost of my white German shepherd. You should be chasing ice, chasing coral. Behind your dreamland lies the end of Eden, the fractured land where life is out of balance in this race against extinction. She mimes drinking from a blue river, reminds me I once promised to trout fish in the Yemen. Instead, we witnessed the vanishing of bees and trekked through the last paradise where I cannot meet with an orangutan's eyes. She says, remember those silent storms you used to watch? Remember butterflies? I confess that I often ignore my octopus teacher, that I scoff at sea piracies. Sadie says, the last animals already migrate and stalk among you. Polar bears, tree frogs the color of toxin, moths too small to capture your awareness. We walk beside a mirage of dark water, Sadie at my side, pressing her head against my thigh. I caress the bridge of her nose and wish I knew how to be a steward for creatures that breathe, a gardener for the lives rooted in the earth. How soon will you transform honey into ash, she asks. Her ghost fades as we walk through the desolation a rich man pretended could be coaxed into a river. Before the ghost vanishes, Sadie begs me to kiss the ground. So at the end of my centos, I list all the things that I took. So if the poem is published, then you see what I took from. I've taken a Zoom class on writing poems in response to movies. Sadie and I have inhabited movies. You've had enough Sadie poems now. So I watched a movie called Paris Blues with Paul Newman and Sidney Poitier and what's her name, Woodward, and I think Lena Horne. And I wanted to write something, a prose poem, differently here too. And so what I did was instead of organizing it so it looked like Kansas, I started thinking every thought is its own unit. And I just write the thought. So it would be a sentence, or it might be a long sentence or something like that. As you can tell, since I tend to speak too much and stuff, they became long sentences and stuff. So this is called, I took this workshop with Tracy Brimhall, who's a very, very fine poet. And she kind of asked some questions, and so in combination with my own weirdness and her questions, I came up with this poem, Why I Have Renamed Myself Nightshade, after Paris Blues. Because I walked barefoot through a black and white Paris with my back turned from the lantern of Notre Dame. Because I memorized the lyrics Marie's soul torched to the woman who anointed the trombonist's bed with American perfume. Because the ghost of European aurochs leaned against the rain-slicked walls of Gare Saint-Lazare and melted the petals of the pale flowers sold by the burlesque women along both banks of the Seine. Because afterward, mood indigo lingered long into the evening until its Adagio merged with the shadows beneath the Arc de Triomphe. Because I find my way through fog. Because I want to rename myself with new rhythms, a hymn or anthem born from the beast inked on the walls of the caves of Lascaux. Because I am too familiar with the tarot cards tossed at my feet by the night rain, the swords, and broken cups. Because I once breakfasted on coffee and apricot croissants, while an old man with a black dog rescued a bouquet of tulips plucked from a row of viburnums. Because every time I buy a canary from the bird market, I set a captive free. This poem was taken by Tony Brewer, kind of a salute to Tony, who took it for Writer Magazine's Culture, Indiana Culture, and then that magazine, it went defunct passing after the person who edited it and owned it and ran it passed. So this, I like this poem, and so there it is. So now it's time for a little humor. Believe it or not, I can be funny sometimes. I have to let you know that I'm going to be funny. So I'm telling you now that I'm being funny. You're allowed to laugh. So I write poems. You know, I think every artist, maybe every person, is haunted by something. And I'm probably haunted by loneliness. Believe it or not, you know, I was married once. And my wife cheated on me with cartoon characters. So here's the poem about that. I wouldn't lie to you. Cuckoo Noir. This time I suspect my darling is cheating on me with Dilbert. The cubicle nerd with his necktie curved in defiance of gravity, potent as primary colors. She enamors herself with these comic strip Lotharios, their sang-froid in the face of public debasement, their deadpanned expressions. For weeks she met Dagwood at Starbucks in prelude to their tryst. Opus left cryptic messages on our answering machine, plus offhand remarks about whipped cream massages, the handcuffs of love. Bill the cat's interest in three ways. I've traced the origins of her infidelity to one-night stands with characters from the Far Side, the hunter with the bullseye on his back, the fat boy who pushed the pull door at the genius school. Her affairs never last more than a few months. She grew bored with Hagar's berserker tales and detested Beetle Bailey for his snooze-a-thon habits. When my honey contested her fling with Hobbs, she complained the beast had fleas. If I wanted to, I could Dick Tracy the hideaways she's bunkered in with Gilbert. Instead, I'll ring Blondie from my little black book. FedEx just delivered our Archie and Veronica costumes. So Jeff Pearson and I, live in Muncie, Indiana, and Jeff's a finer poet than I am. And together we write Bards on the Run poems. We write poems for hire in Muncie and whoever else wants to hire us and stuff. And several years ago, the nonfiction writer Kelsey Timmerman, who lives in Muncie, asked me to write him a poem, and so I did. And I put something in this poem that happened here. I put something that happened here in this poem. You'll see if you can figure out what it is. You'd never believe it would happen to me. Where am I poeming? A Bards on the Run poem for KT. You type a poem on an orange typewriter for the man who has traveled the world seeking the holy grail of boxer shorts and the secrets of the exotic bananas plotting to take over local produce stands. You make it up as you type, striking a series of X's over your mistakes. The man who has traveled the world has had his name mispronounced by famous people. Young women volunteer to join him on jaunts to play soccer in Central America and kabaddi in Bangladesh. He rescued slaves from cocoa plantations, taught you how to find the number of slaves your lifestyle supports. 37 men and women. You eat too much chocolate. You write too many poems about driving away from your life. Too many poems about a ne'er-do-well with a modest collection of rayon shirts printed with surfboards or seahorses. Later today, someone wants a sonnet about his beautiful daughter who makes bologna for a living. And a woman asked for a prose poem about the sunglasses she inherited from her mother. Once, a Brazilian supermodel hugged you for the gift of flying with parrots in the rainforest. Your one shining moment. Your short cup of Java with Aphrodite. Writing poems could be like that. While the man who has traveled the world in search of his holy grail treats garment workers to roller coaster rides and newfound friends to an evening on a bowling alley, someone else has to operate the return carriage on the orange typewriter. Someone else has to know how to spell ineffable. There can be only one expert on Jingle Bell's underwear. Still, every time you relive this Brazilian supermodel's hug, you believe there can never be too many experts on giving. If you didn't know, I was actually hugged by a Brazilian supermodel right out there about 3 or 4 years ago. So this poem is going to appear. How are we doing for time? Oh, we're fine.
You're right up there.
Oh, okay, good. This poem's going to appear in Jenny Calahar's Last Stanza Poetry Journal. I write poems about dystopias and apocalypse and stuff. It happens in my backyard every day, it seems like. This is called Animal Songs of the Apocalypse in a Minor Key. My mother taught me to play the drifter's harp over our first winter without cardinals. Later, after the soybeans crashed and the pawpaws had barrened, my father cobbled together a guitar from a shoebox and rubber bands. I worked up a Rainmaker Deluxe by seeding a Pringles can with crooked nails and dried beans from a ball jar, all bound with duct tape. I scavenged with duct tape, I scavenged from an abandoned tool shed along the National Road. Around that time when the last painted turtle passed at the Cincinnati Zoo, I took up traveling the hymns and hummers circuit from Pinch through Story by way of Nineveh these last 17 years, stopping in Bobo whenever a host offered room and board to hear my take on Uncle Walter Goes Waltzing with Bears. Mostly I played folkies, Stew Ball, Mockingbird, The Lion Sleeps Tonight. Every creature had a lyric penned in their honor before we gave up on being stewards and shepherds and such. Singers like me journeyed on unmapped frontier trails to elude the cannibals. Some of my kin sang about dust storms, about potato famines and sugar cream pies. What we lost. The animals vanishing like a Thessalonian's rapture. I smuggled myself into root cellars outside of Toad Hop and onto back porches with animal tracks woodworked into the lintels, hidden among the hex signs and scripture lettering, code for all our sanctuaries west of Bee Hunter. But this spring's gully washers and monster tornadoes played out the homestayers. Hardly anyone now can toss together an impromptu dandelion salad with a dash of local beetles for the metabolism. The paths we trekked turned hardpan overnight, lacking even a sour apple tree to set an eye on. The way water towers welcomed wayfarers to those Hoosier County seats in the long ago time. I tinkered with new melodies, picked up the tricky fretwork on Hungry Like the Wolf, and pegged Wild Horses as an a cappella during a side trip into Michigan when we thought Longhorns might come back. Afterward, it seemed like the things we needed shouldn't be wanted too much. Last month, I had a massive distance between where I entertained and where to head to next, with cannibals hooting and hollering outside the church where I encored with Bird on the Wire the year before. Luckily, I knew a cave where one of the last dogs went to ground, but I quit on the rest of my animal song hootenannies and gifted my homemade instruments to the attic of the last house I slept in. The things we need aren't worth wanting anymore. We only got 2 minutes left, so I'm going to stop there.